back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys, so I recently made a video where I mentioned the term fantasy of manners. Now, fantasy of manners is a subgenre, if you like, of fantasy, and essentially it usually means that it's some sort of regency or period of history that is quite related to upper class, I suppose, and generally speaking we have characters who are kind of in the same vein as like a comedy of manners, I suppose. There are some satirical moments, some comedic moments. Usually there's quite often a romantic moment in the book as well, and for the purposes of fantasy there's usually magic of some kind, whether the magic is oblique and it's a big part of the world or whether it's kind of a more subtle part. Depends on the author and the book, of course, but usually there is magic of some kind in the background somehow, and the characters are witty and snarky and kind of full of themselves at times, and generally there is a lean towards regency as well, or some upper class, that kind of thing. So it's a big mixture, but I think if you like historical fiction at all, then you'll probably like Fantasy of Manners. Light-hearted, fun, easygoing reads, then I would say that this is more that area. It's easier reading than an epic fantasy, for instance. It's definitely much easier reading than that. I have read quite a few Fantasy of Manners. Some I've not liked and some I have. And I've got a lot of others that I'd like to read as well on my sort of to be read list at some point. I'd love to hear if you guys have any other recommendations that I'm not talking about in this video, so let me know in the comments. But let's dive into some of the ones I recommend and then some of the ones that I am hoping to read soon-ish. So probably the first time I heard this term, Fantasy of Manners, associated with a book series that I was reading, was the Shades of Milk and Honey book, which is the first one in the Glamorous Histories series by Mary Robinette Kowal. This is a series of books which very much deals with regency. There is magic as part of this world, and that is glamour, which only glamorists are able to do, and our main character is a glamorist and she's learning her process and her craft. She is also in a sort of love interest situation. This book series reminds me a little bit of like Jane Austen's style of writing, but I think it feels a lot more fun and a lot more immediate than that. It's definitely easy to connect with. So I would recommend this whole series. I've read all of them. I really recommend them. And I ended up giving that one a 4.5 stars and just enjoyed the whole series. It's easy to get into the period, even if it's not something you're familiar with or you don't really like classics and that style of writing. I think this is a very easy way of getting into a Regency style book, but with magic and fun going on as well. Another one that I read relatively recently is The Lord of Starel. This is by AJ Lancaster, and it's the first one in the Starel series. Now, I've only read the first one in the series so far, but I did enjoy it. It's about a family, and Hetta is our main character, who is the black sheep of the family. She's left to go away for quite a long time. Whilst she goes back to visit her family for a funeral, she is trying to uncover the magic of the land around her and the secrets of the Fae. However, she was looked down upon for really having a big interest in this, so she kind of has to do it on the sly. Now, I will say this wasn't my favourite of all the Fantasy of Manners books I've read. I think it was like 3 stars, so a bit middle of the road, but I did enjoy it, and I do think I might continue on with the series at some point. Another one that I read not too long ago is Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons, which is the first one in the Miss Percy book series, and this is by Quenby Olson. I've read the first 2 now in this series, and I really enjoy them. Miss Percy is a sort of spinster character who lives with her family. She has never really known where her life is going to go. She's always thought she might just end up kind of staying with her sister forever and helping out with the care of the kids. But then she gets gifted a dragon egg, and as part of finding this dragon egg, she then has to go on an adventure to see what she can do about it and where it should end up. And she gets into all kinds of shenanigans on that adventure. It's a really fun, easy read, and I highly recommend that one. Speaking of dragons, because why not? We're already on the topic. Memoirs of Lady Trent by Marie Brennan, A Natural History of Dragons is the first one. This series is one of my all-time favourite series. It is just fantastic. Our Lady Trent character is one of my all-time favourite ladies in fantasy. I just think she's fabulous. She goes out and she's determined to be a natural historian who goes and researches dragons all over the world. Dragons are out there, but they haven't been researched as much as she would like, and she goes on kind of adventures around the world to investigate them. And this story also has lots of beautiful illustrations throughout the whole series, so I highly recommend this series. It's just such a lovely one, and yeah, I would recommend this to anyone, to be honest. The Goblin Emperor is one that gets kind of bandied around quite a lot when you're talking about Fantasy of Manners, and I have read and enjoyed this one. It is, I would say, a little bit more focused on political drama than it is on magic, but obviously the main character is a goblin, so that's magical in itself. It's about this character who is not the expected emperor and kind of has to take his place in society as the emperor. I think for me it was a little bit insular and a little bit too heavy on the politics, because personally I don't love political fantasy. It's fine if it's there, but I don't want it to be the main focus, and I think in this book it is. So if you do like politics and political fantasy, then this is probably going to be something that will tick a lot of your boxes. As I say, it still very much falls into the Fantasy of Manners vibe, but for me it wasn't my favourite. I gave it a middle of the road, like 3 stars I think. One that I've started the series for but I haven't got very far with yet, although I do intend to carry on, is the Temeraire series by Naomi Novik. I really enjoyed the first, I think I've read 2 in this series now. It starts with His Majesty's Dragon, and this is about the Napoleonic Wars and about a dragon rider and their dragon kind of working together and learning one another and their processes, and it's all about interfering in the war and what they get up to. I think Naomi Novik's writing is definitely one I like, and for this series by her, it's probably my favourite one by her. So the next one on my list is Tooth and Claw by Jo Walton. This one is a story where all of the characters are dragons, and we are meeting, I think, a lot of siblings. Their father is dead and his wishes weren't fully enacted, and there's a fair bit of family politics going on. Now, family politics I don't mind so much. That's, I think, a bit more interesting than just general politics. So I like this story. It does feel very approachable. It's a very short story as well, so easy to go dive into and finish up quite quickly. And I've read a couple of Jo Walton's books and I've enjoyed a lot of them, so I would certainly say she's well worth trying if you haven't already tried out her work, and this one is an enjoyable one. Now, Gail Carragher, I wasn't entirely certain if I could shoehorn her in or not, but I kind of think she does fit the mould. Her books are steampunk as well, I would say, a little bit of urban fantasy, but I would also say that they do fit into the mould of Fantasy of Manners because they do have that kind of time period, that kind of snarkiness. They are maybe a little bit borderline with urban fantasy. It's kind of a bit of both, I'd say. Now, Soulless is the first one in the Parasol Protectorate series, and then Etiquette and Espionage is the first one in the Finishing School series. I would say both of these series do count under Fantasy of Manners umbrella term. They're both silly. One is about a finishing school where younger women can go and learn the arts of being essentially assassins and finishing the job, so to speak. And then the other one is all about characters with vampires and werewolves and different kinds of characters kind of all being part of a world. So I really liked both of these series. I've finished both series and I highly recommend Gail Carragher in general. I actually need to go back and read some more of her stuff because she's released quite a few new books since I last read her stuff, and I really want to give her another go and go back because, yeah, I enjoy her work a lot. Some more that I've recently read. I recently read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This is about a young woman who travels to a remote, kind of slightly hostile landscape to investigate fairies that are there. She is writing a book about it, and along the way one of her colleagues kind of follows her there. He's a little bit of an oddball and she doesn't quite know how to react to him following her, but they have a bit of a romance and there's some secrets in his past, and of course the Fae are a big part of the story, so it definitely fits the mould for Fantasy of Manners. I think I gave this 3.5. Again, I enjoyed it. I think there's a second one out now or coming soon, and I might well continue on with the series at some point. Another series which I would class as Fantasy of Manners borders urban fantasy, they're a bit of both, is the Split World series by Emma Newman. You may have heard me talk about this series before on my channel. It's one that I highly recommend and really enjoyed. It is dark, it's twisty, It starts with Between Two Thorns. So this is the story of Kathy largely, but also Max, who is an investigator. She is a character who's born into a story, or a family rather, where her father is very dominating and very powerful, and there is magic undertones to all of that and a kind of seedy side of things. It definitely feels a little bit like Fantasy of Manners-esque, Downton Abbey-esque, I suppose. And we also follow a couple of other characters at the same time, Max being one of them, who is investigating what's going on. It is a bit of a strange combination of the Nether, which is the Fey world, and then Mundanus, which is our world. And we have characters from both. So Kathy is from the sort of netherworld, along with Max, who is this investigator who's investigating this crime that has happened there. We also have Sam, who is from the mortal world. He's a mundane, a human, and he kind of just gets sucked into the action. Now, I think this is a series that gets better and better each book. I liked the first one a lot. I gave it 4 stars, but then I think by the end of the series, I was totally in love with the characters, and I highly recommend checking this one out. Another series which I would kind of almost class as Fantasy of Manners. Again, it borders with that urban, slightly more gritty side of it. This is The Mask of Mirrors. Now, this is very much about high society, but we are following a character who is from very low society and has kind of elevated herself secretly as an estranged cousin or something from the family. She comes into society and she is kind of trying to integrate herself into this very well-off family in order to hopefully get some money. But when she does so, she also discovers the sort of gritty, dark magic that's going on in this world and the way that certain people have control of that magic as well. So it's definitely got some dark elements. I really enjoyed this. It's a slightly bigger book than some of the others that I've mentioned, and I think it definitely has certain amounts of fantastical Regency style period, but also witty characters, definitely. The characters are fun in this one. I really like them, and I've read the first 2. I think the 3rd one came out recently, so I need to pick that one up, or maybe it's coming out soon. But anyway, it's out soon or recently. I love this series. I've really enjoyed both the books that I have read in this one so far. Now on to the final one that I'm going to talk about that I've already read, although there are other books that would fall under Fantasy of Manners that I've read. It's just I either have forgotten to include them or I have just not loved them, like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Let's not mention that one because I don't like that one. Anyway, Sorcery and Cecilia, or The Enchanted Chocolate Pot. Now, by the time you're seeing this, I'm either about to upload a review for this or I have, but I'll give you a summary. It is a really fun story between 2 characters who are cousins called Cecilia and Kate, and this is the start of a series, so I will be carrying on with the rest of the series. But yeah, this is just fun. They are 2 cousins. One has gone to London for their season and the other one is kind of stuck at home, but they both get embroiled in the same plot with the same characters, just spread out over different locations. There is a chocolate pot that appears to be magical and kind of the root of all the magic and problems that are going on in their little town and in London. So they are kind of connected to a lot of the adventures. One of them is very magical, the other one less so. They don't quite know their potential, but they are really fun and snarky, and this was actually written as a kind of project between 2 authors firing letters at each other and developing the story, which I just think is a really cool way to write a book. So I am super excited to carry on with the series. I gave this 4 stars and I definitely will be imminently continuing on. Now, there are quite a few books that I have been recommended and I would love more recommendations, but these are some of the ones that are on my TBR, so I don't really know much about them besides that they are Fantasy of Manners and people recommended them. So Midnight Never Come, The Onyx Court. I have this one on my shelf. I haven't read it, but I have started it before. I think I put it down because my head wasn't in the right headspace, but actually the book I was enjoying, so I do need to just find it and start over, I think, but I was enjoying this when I began it. Scales and Sensibility by Stephanie Burgess. This is one that I have been recommended plenty of times by people. I think it might have possibly been in the SBFBO as well. So yes, definitely keen to try this one out. It's supposed to be about kidnapping a pet dragon or something to do with that, which does sound like a lot of fun, and I like the cover for this one. Swords Point is one which I have been recommended plenty of times and I just have not read it. This is kind of one of the original, shall we say, Fantasy of Manners books. I think a lot of people have really enjoyed this and I just haven't given it a go, so I'm excited to do that. This one's a bit older, it came out in the 80s, so I'm definitely due to read this, and I hopefully will do soon. Let me know if you've read this one, because as I say, it's been out for quite a while, so I guess a lot of people will have. Another one that I came across whilst I was looking up ideas of Fantasy of Manners was Of Dragons, Feasts and Murders, which sounds like a lot of fun. It's by Aliette de Bodard, and I don't know if I've actually read any Aliette de Bodard stuff yet. Definitely heard the name, but I don't think I've actually read any of her stuff. I believe this one is a standalone, but it's also a spin-off of one of her other series, and it's all about the Dragon Prince who brings home his husband who is brooding, and instead of having a big family celebration for the new year, they end up having a murder outside of their room. So I guess they have to investigate. Possibly this is one that crosses that Regency Fantasy of Manners meets Urban again. Another one I have heard about but I've not really looked into is Newt's Emerald. Now this is by Garth Nix. I've read other series by him and I enjoyed them. It does sound like it's a standalone, which is good, and I'm excited to give it a go. I believe it's about a character who is called Lady Truthful, nicknamed Newt, who goes out and is trying to find Emerald, who has disappeared, and in order to find her she dresses up as a man, because in high society it would be wrong for a woman to go out investigating, and I guess the adventure goes from there. And I believe there is a sorceress as part of the story, so I guess that's where the magical element comes in. Another one I've been recommended is The Dark Days Club by Alison Goodman. This again is the first in a series, and this was on a few lists that I looked up, and I think I've been recommended it before because I definitely remember hearing her name. It's about a young woman who is presented to the Queen, and after that she kind of gets sucked into the society, and as part of that she meets a cabal of demons. It sounds bit dark and a bit fun. Another one that I am interested to try out is the series which starts with A College of Magics by Carolyn Stevermeyer. This is one of the authors who co-wrote Cecile and the Chocolate Pot, so I am excited to try her series, her own series, and along the same veins as that, there's also a series called Marilon, which is starting off with Marilon the Magician, just by Patricia C. Reedy, and again she is one of the co-authors of Cecilia and the Chocolate Pot, so I'm excited to read their own series and see if I enjoy them. Hopefully I will. And then I have also been recommended The Clockwork Boys by T. Kingfisher. I'm reading another T. Kingfisher probably first because I already own it, but if I like T. Kingfisher's work, then I think there's quite a lot of books out there that I can give a go to, and this is one that keeps being recommended as well to me. The final one that I'm going to talk about is actually one I own. Shocking, I know, because I've put up pictures for everything else, but this is The Ruthless Lady's Guide to Wizardry, C.M. Wagoner, and it very much sounds like it fits the mould of Fantasy of Manners. It says it's about a petty con artist and an occasional thief and partly educated fire witch who is behind on her rent, and so she goes to try and join a team of unconventional women to protect an aristocrat from unseen assassins. So it sounds very much like it would fit the mould. As I say, I'd love to have your recommendations. There are many hundreds of Fantasy of Manners style books out there, and this is just a small scattering of them, but some of the ones that I enjoyed and some of the ones that I am excited to try. Let me know in the comments if there's anything I've missed that you guys really recommend, or if this is an entirely new subgenre to you and you've never heard of it before. I hope you can dip your toe in and see if it's for you or not. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you very soon in another video. Bye everyone!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.